Hey everyone, welcome to the Healthy Team Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Erickson, and this is the show where we dive into the real stories about thriving workplace culture, exploring everything from wellness and morale to leadership and productivity. Today, I'm happy to welcome Jared Haslam, CEO at Kintsugi Institute. Jared is, as I said, CEO of Kintsugi Institute, and he brings nearly 2 decades of corporate experience to the table, including a former role as VP of Product Strategy and Planning at Nissan North America. But Jared's real passion lies somewhere deeper, helping leaders and teams thrive through personal growth, emotional awareness, and by breaking the stigma around mental health in the workplace. Jared, welcome to the show.
Mark, thank you. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm grateful to be here with you.
Oh, you're so welcome. Jared, let's kick things off by having you tell us just a little bit about your business
Sure.
and the kind of work that you and your team do at the Kintsugi Institute.
Oh, that's a great lead in. So we find ourselves at the intersection between mental health and leadership in business. We're looking to help leaders and businesses, particularly teams, work through all of the psychological and emotional underpinnings of burnout, dysfunction, stress, the things that everyone experiences that not many people have answers for. And that's where we're trying to make our mark. And so we spend a lot of time with people working through the dynamics of their team, trying to unpack the things that are keeping them from being successful in leadership roles, and really diving deeper into all of that stuff underneath that no one realizes is there, but is absolutely present, affecting their work.
Awesome, Jared. What was the catalyst that kind of led you from the corporate work to the type of work that you're doing now at the Kintsugi Institute?
It started, quite honestly, with a series of questions that my wife asked me one evening. She recognized when I came home from work that day that things were not well, that I was on a different path, and she starts to ask me as a series of questions like, "Hey, does this sound familiar to you?" And she starts to go through several questions, and I'm like, "Yes, that sounds familiar," and "Yes, that sounds familiar." And she said, Jared, um, that was a checklist to identify trauma. And I had never really thought about trauma in that sense. That I always kind of thought trauma was something for somebody who experienced something absolutely horrible, or PTSD is what we hear a lot about. But she read through the checklist, and I hit every box. And she said, something's not quite right with what's going on, and we need to make a change. So that started the ball rolling. She went and got her master's in marriage and family therapy, and I took the steps to change my career. And I left the corporate world, and in so doing, began to talk with others and recognize that it's a very, very common thing for particularly in white collar work to experience a lot of things in the workplace that have an impact on our mental health, on our general health, and that there are not adequate resources or the proper resources to really address some of those things. And so we decided to start our business together. I work with my wife. She's the one that keeps me straight on the mental health stuff, making sure that we're actually working with evidence-based theories, that we're actually doing the proper work from a psychological perspective. And I bring a lot of the business context in it, and I'm passionate about what we do. And that's kind of how I transitioned out of the corporate world into what we're doing today.
Fascinating. Uh, Now, I know that you guys work with teams. Do you also work maybe with leaders who might
Absolutely.
have some concerns about their teams?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, what we've found is that the most successful interventions, if you will, as it's kind of a strong word, but the most successful is when we can actually get the whole team together with the leader, with the teams, do a complete diagnostic where we're talking in a very safe and comfortable space with everybody to understand really what's happening, And we get to work with team members and we get to work with leaders. Oftentimes, a leader who comes in and says, "Hey, my team is X, Y, and Z," they're part of the problem. In fact, they may own a significant portion of the problem. And so we try to unpack the patterns that are happening at that emotional level and at that interaction and relational level that are causing some of the dysfunction that happens in teams. So teams and leaders, executive teams, anytime we're dealing with each other, there's the human elements involved. And in fact, most problems in business, if you trace them back far enough, are actually human and emotional problems. And so that's what we try to dig into first. So leaders and teams all the way.
Awesome. I read a quote attributed to you. We'll see if this is accurate. You said that 7 in 10 employees feel their manager has the most impact on their mental health, second only to their spouse.
Yeah.
Is that accurate? That's pretty wild, though. It kind of makes sense.
Yeah, that came from a study that was done about a year ago, year and a half ago, and I read that study, which called that out. That basically said 7 in 10 people attribute their mental health or the impact on their mental health to managers, even over spouse and therapists and so forth. And my wife, being a therapist, I took some umbrage with the fact that therapists weren't higher up on that list, and so I actually reached out to the authors of the study and tried to pinpoint some of the way that they did things. And the study had an impact of identifying the absolute critical nature that managers have and the impact managers have. I think we could argue about the results and how they came about it, but it was very, very clear that managers have a massive impact on the mental health of their employees. And in considering the fact that you spend 8 to 10 hours a day with working with these people, it's not a surprise to hear that they have that significant of an impact, but absolutely true. Now, I would also suggest that the study may not have accounted for those who or adjusted for those who did or did not have a therapist. If you take a group of people and only 5 of them have, but then it's going to skew the answers a little bit. But clearly, managers have a significant impact.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I 100% believe it. Anybody who's had a bad manager, a really
Yeah.
difficult manager, would maybe say that they're the number one
Yeah.
impact on their health, really.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I've been
Absolutely.
there.
Yeah.
I had that terrible manager
Oh,
once.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
look and I learned a lot about what not to do in business from that individual.
Yeah. It's really that's it, most everybody has, and I think people walk away with different experiences, either growing or scars, or depending on how. I mean, it can be have a huge impact. And part of the challenge is for organizations is to recognize when, number one, when they have a bad leader, because most of the time a bad leader will know not to show that side on upwards, right? They tend to not show that. So it's really difficult for businesses to identify when they have a really bad leader. But it's also a challenge because most of the most of the challenges that that in that leadership perspective don't come from a lack of skill. You can teach skills. Um, it comes from, one, a lack of training. Most leaders are just kind of tossed into a role. But two, most leaders don't recognize that they're bringing all of their emotional baggage with them. So whatever baggage, and we all have it. There's no question that we all have certain things that have impacted our lives, impact the way we interact with people, and it shows up naturally. That's kind of our go-to. That's what's emblazoned in our minds. That's the neural pathways that we follow. And so we get into situations in default, and if you aren't aware of what's affecting that, then you get bad bosses, right? You get the people who bring it all, and they bring it into the team. They interact very poorly, and it's just it's a problem all the way around. And businesses have yet to figure out a really solid way to solve that problem. Some of it's in language, and there's a lot of other reasons why, but massive impact on business and people.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Jared, what are some of the subtle ways that leadership either supports or undermines mental health for teams?
Oh, there are a lot of different things to do. Okay, so let's start first with supporting mental health. Um, there is a lot of research out there that talks about emotional intelligence. We've read a lot of those, but emotional intelligence is probably a bit too narrow. A boss who can demonstrate the capability of managing themselves will support the mental health of individuals. For example, someone comes in, drops the ball, and I've watched bosses screaming in meetings, very, very poor self-management. That's going to reduce the level of mental health, or we can call it psychological safety. It's all connected. So a boss that can manage themselves, that's self-aware enough and manage themselves to be able to have effective communication that's not degrading. Got to manage themselves. The second thing is they have to demonstrate value, that each member of the team is valuable. And if they can focus on showing each member of the team, hey, you're a valuable part of the team. And part of that is looking at the progress and potential of an individual rather than the immediate performance. If someone messes up 4 or 5 times in a row, you may have a problem. But if someone comes in and messes up once, look at the progress and potential of that individual versus, hey, you messed up once, and start hammering them. When a boss can do that and demonstrate that valuable, that's going to support the mental health of the team. And the third thing is, and there's a bunch of them, but the third thing is if you're willing to show some empathy. And when you can empathize with the team members, you're going to form connections that are going to be the foundation for team success. Once you make those connections and nurture those connections through empathy and through showing value, then your team is going to be much, much more healthy psychologically and mentally, and way more successful. So flip that coin over, and you've got all the recipes for what not to do as a boss: silently undermining, constant criticism, micromanaging, questioning, calling into question motives, backbiting, criticism. There's a principle that comes out of research done around families and marriages, and there are 4 things that when the presence of those 4 things are when those 4 things are present in any sort of relationship, they're indicators of a failed relationship. And we're talking about things like criticism, sort of just constant criticism. We're talking about things like emotional shutdowns, where you disengage. We're talking about things like contempt, where you just outright hate people, right? You just hate the other person. And when those things start to come into play, then your team is going to suffer. The people on your team are going to suffer, and you simply will not. You won't be effective at all in a team environment.
Wow, that's so true. Um, Jared, your organization is named Kintsugi, and could you share with us a little bit about the meaning
Sure.
behind that name, please?
Yeah. As my wife and I were starting to pull our thoughts together about this business, we wanted to ensure that there was a very human element associated with it. So we're going to be a little different than most executive coaches or even most therapists that are going to kind of be the polar ends of those spectrums. And we wanted to land right in the middle to demonstrate that you can bring humanity into business. And kintsugi is the Japanese art of mending pottery and highlighting the breaks with gold. And the idea is that, one, when we feel broken, when there's something that's just not right, that you can fix it and it can be fixed. And two, that those natural breaks where we've messed up or something bad has happened and we've healed them, those aren't things to be hidden. We shouldn't run away from them. In fact, as we highlight those in our lives, it helps us identify ourselves as in a unique way. And it represents the power and the beauty of who we are and showing up exactly how we are: warts, scars, beautiful scars, and all. So that came from our time in Japan. We lived in Japan. And it's a beautiful concept that not only is the pottery beautiful, the actual artwork is beautiful, but the metaphor is so powerful when you're working to overcome the challenges that we find on a day-to-day basis.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Jared, how do you help leaders and teams embrace their cracks as opportunities for growth rather than something to hide or to fix?
So a lot of it is about perspective. When we face anything that's uncertain, anxious, or we're trying to hide, it's gonna cause a lot of stress for us. But it's a matter of perspective. So, what we try to do is number one, help people identify those things. Because again, most people are not aware that, hey, I have a crack here, or I have something that I'm bringing to the table here. They're not aware of it. In fact, we're working with one of the most brilliant people that we've ever worked with, and they were struggling immensely with something. And so we started to just unpack, says, okay, what's driving this? What are the assumptions that you have about this? What are you telling yourself as you go through this? And when we were able to unpack some of those things, we begin to identify, okay, here's a pattern. And they hadn't thought about it. They hadn't recognized it. So as soon as people can recognize those patterns, then you can start to see what's the light side of that pattern. How is it functioning and how could it function? See, everything that's involved in whatever situation is, or the things that we have of a light side and a dark side. The dark side is typically what we lean into because we're scared of it. We don't like it. But there's a light side. And so we help change the perspective to what's on the light side of a problem or a scar or a crack that they have, and what it could mean. Most of the time, the cracks that we have help us have greater empathy and connection with other people. And so we can help people see that. And it changes their perspective. And therefore, that becomes more of something to not run away from, but to acknowledge, honor, and lean into as the situations warrant it.
Awesome. How could a small business owner begin to assess and improve the culture of their team?
Um, Great. That's actually a fantastic question. I don't get that one very much, quite honestly. Um, the first thing an owner can do, a small business owner or someone that's working in a small business team, is take a hard look in the mirror. That's tough to say, but assess what language they're using as it references their team. Assess how willing they are to tackle their own stuff. And once they start to recognize that they can have an impact just by bringing themselves authentically and wholly to the table and acknowledging that they've got their own faults, it will start to create a space for others to feel comfortable or safe to do that. And then you start to have authentic connections, and then you start to have authentic dialogue, and then you start to have safety and psychological safety in the workplace that will not only be successful to grow or work with your team, but to create fantastic relationships. So start with yourself. That's number one. Number two, make sure that you are listening, absolutely listening, without judgment, without um, listening to answer. That you are just taking in the information that your team is telling you. If you don't listen, they will stop telling you. And when they stop telling you, the culture is already in the toilet, right? You've got to listen. So if you can listen, again, take the most respectful interpretation of what they're trying to say and find out and listen, then you are going to start to hear people talk. And the things that they say will help you as a leader guide your team. And then the final thing is learn how to regulate the emotional energy of yourself and your team. So when the stress starts to dial up, you have to have the triggers to, number one, acknowledge when that stress is going up. But number two, how do you dial it down? As a leader, if you can dial that stress down, your team will follow what you're sensing and feeling. If you're high strung and this is the most important thing, just like it was yesterday, and the day, like and very, very high strung, your team will also be high strung, and that will take a massive toll because it becomes chronic. And when it becomes chronic, it starts to affect our bodies physically, mentally, all of the above. So learn how to take the stress level down, change your perception of the challenges in front of you, take the longer view. There's a lot of physical things that you can do to kind of bring that stress level down. And as you do that as a leader, your team will follow. and they will thank you for it because they will also have that stress level kind of come down. And those are a few things that leaders can do to enhance the mental health and enhance the team culture.
And Jared, would you mind touching on some of the benefits to a leader of doing that good work?
Oh yeah.
Um, and not just to them personally, but also to the team and the company as a whole.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question because as a leader, there's a lot of personal things that can happen. Um, what they've found is that solid connections, solid social connections, and you can lump work connections in there. When you have really good connections, that actually has an impact on your health, and the statistics are astounding because it actually has a greater impact on your health than some of the vices that we might consider. Um, there's a physical benefit to kind of keeping yourself mentally solid, absolute physical benefit. But from a team perspective, what you're going to see is a few things. Ultimately, you're going to lead to greater engagement with your workforce. Your workforce will want to be engaged in the work that you're doing because they're going to see it as they see themselves as an integral part of the whole process. When they're engaged, the Gallup poll has come out each year. They come out to measure engagement. The Gallup poll. The bottom line is companies that have engaged employees have a profit that's 20 to 23% higher than those companies that don't. So there is a very, very practical dollars and cents return on investment when you work to keep your employees engaged. And all of that, I'm going to lump under mental health. Others would argue that there's a lot you can do systemically to build engagement, but fundamentally, the better the leader that's conscientious of the humanity and the human element, the more engaged your people are going to be. So that's the kind of the bottom line final state. You'll be more profitable the more you pay attention to this. But walking that back just a little bit, you're going to have less turnover as employees are more healthy. There's going to be less turnover, less absenteeism, greater engagement at work, and so you have presenteeism, which is basically shutting off while you're at work. But you'll have less of that, and that's again dollars and cents. That's productivity. As you lean into it, though, the positive aspects of mental health are really where the benefits of focusing come into play because you have teams that are way more effective. They work better. Your ideas are going to start to flow. Your innovation is going to come. And those are all things that we all say that we want. If you want it, focus on the positive aspects of mental health. Make sure that your employees are well mentally. And if you do, that's where all of the good stuff resides.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Jared, if there's a leader listening today who they themselves might be feeling burned out or
Yeah.
disconnected, where should they start in terms of personal growth
Mm.
or, do some work to get recentered?
Yeah. So my wife and I have kind of come up with a process that can help leaders just do that. Now, most of it, um, most of it you can try to do on your own, but quite honestly, the most effective way to kind of get through some of this stuff is to have someone walking it with you. We're very strong advocates for therapy. Therapy tends to be a really shady word in the business world, and it shouldn't be at all. A therapist is going to be able to identify all of those things underneath the surface that are causing some of the stuff that you're experiencing. So, first off, you kind of got to get level set. And that involves a lot of work, both physically and mentally, to get level set. Take a walk. Sounds goofy, I know, but take a walk, get outside, get yourself set up physically so that you're doing something to help your body, socially, so that you can take the pressure off and share some of that with your support system. Spiritually, get connected to a higher purpose, whatever it is. If it's not religion, fine, but get connected to a higher purpose. And mentally, do the work that's required to get yourself mentally in shape. That's kind of triage. Let's get you to the base level. And then we would strongly advocate that you work with someone like our team, both Stacy and me, to identify Are there things that we can help you process through the trauma training that we have to ensure that all that stuff gets processed, and then help you rebuild what your life needs to look like so that you can function in a better way? It doesn't mean you have to jettison everything, but it may mean you need to draw some boundaries and put some priorities where they might be misplaced. And we can help people identify that and get back on track to where they need to be.
Love that. Great advice. Jared, what's one small thing a leader could do this week that could have a meaningful impact on their team's well-being?
Yes, for one thing, I'm gonna tell you two things. If I can
Just two
indulge.
things are fine.
Two things.
Yeah.
Okay, two things.
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing is do something to acknowledge your humanity to the team. It doesn't have to be something that's soul bearing, but acknowledge a mistake. It might be go ahead and acknowledge that it's been super stressful and that you're working through it. Anything that you can do to demonstrate that you're human, just like they are, is going to help you relate to them and them relate to you in a way that you probably you may never have. So that's the first thing. Do something human. And the second thing is take some time to really listen to your employees. Just let them talk. In a meeting, let somebody else talk instead of you. And those two things will not only impact your own relationship with them, but it will impact how they see you as a leader. You might think it's weakness. It is not weakness. It can't be construed as weakness, but instead it is relatable, and your employees will respond. And those two things are gonna have a dramatic impact immediately when you start to do that.
Wow. Tremendous advice. Thank you. Jared, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you again for joining us and sharing your insights on
Absolutely.
team
My pleasure.
building and mental health. And before we wrap up, Jared, could you let our listeners know where they can find you and
Sure.
learn more about the Kintsugi Institute?
Sure. So, connect with me on LinkedIn. I spend a lot of time there, and build my connections there, and a lot of our advice and tips and things like that are going to be there. And so you can find me, Jared Haslam, at LinkedIn. You'll see me there. You can reach out to Kintsugi Institute, and that will direct you to how we can help your business, or how we can maybe help you individually through a deeper therapeutic relationship. So Kintsugi Institute. I know it's a tough one to spell, but you get close and you'll find us. And those are the best ways to get a hold of us. And we are happy to assess how things are happening in the business, assess where you are as a leader, and figure out the best way that we can support in resolving maybe some dysfunction that's occurred or even burnout that's happening in either place. And we're happy to help.
Thank you so much, Jared. Absolutely love what you and your team are doing.
Thank you.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to the Healthy Team Podcast. If you like what you heard today, please be sure to like and subscribe and share today's episode with your team and really with anybody who's passionate about building great workplace culture. And we'll be back soon with more great conversations about building stronger, healthier teams. And until next time, stay well and lead well. And that is a wrap. Thank you so much for
You're
your
welcome.
time, Jared. That was